Hi, I'm Jerry Carter with the Sierra Crest Business Law Group here in Reno, Nevada, and we represent a lot of business owners. And so one of the questions that comes up in our business representation is what type of entity should I use to start my business? A lot of business owners ask us if a Nevada Series limited liability company is appropriate for their business. And I'd like to talk a little bit about what a Nevada Series limited liability company is, what it can do for you as a business owner, what are some of the traps and things to be wary about with the Nevada Series limited liability company, and then hopefully give you some information that will enable you to get on your way to explore your options and make a choice on what to do. So let's start with what is a Nevada Series limited liability company. Many business owners have heard of traditional limited liability companies, or LLCs, and they basically, it's an entity that allows the owners to a lot of flexibility in putting together the way the entity will be governed and how it will do business and how the members or owners will vote. Nevada Series Limited Liability Company involves an overarching LLC under which you have a series of separate units or sub-companies. And it could be any number. There could be 5, there could be 10, there could be 100. And the concept is that you create the one LLC by filing the articles of organization with the Secretary of State and by paying the fees for that one entity. And then you can create these sub-entities underneath it, which don't have their own separate filing requirements. They don't have their own separate fees. But further to that is that if you set it up right, the sub-companies are protected from the liabilities of the other sub-companies. So if you have sub-company A that owes money to a creditor, if things are set up correctly, then sub-company B does not have to pay company A's debts. Each of the sub-companies will need its own EIN number for purposes of federal taxation. And you can take a traditional Nevada limited liability company and convert it over to a series limited liability company. So that's what a series limited liability company is. Now, what is the use of a Nevada Series LLC? What can a Nevada Series LLC do for you? First of all, as we've mentioned, you can save a lot of money in filing fees because you only pay one set of filing fees for the entire company, no matter how many sub-companies you have under that umbrella. Second, the main advantage is that you can separate the liabilities from company to company or from sub-company to sub-company if you do things right. Third, and it may be more important to some companies than others, but you can preserve a little bit of anonymity by using this structure. Any limited liability company that is formed has to publicly file a list of managers or managing members. And so those names will be out there in the public domain, but the subunits don't file anything, and they can have different managers, different members, they can have different operating agreements, and so there will be a little bit of anonymity as to the subunits in the series. Let's talk a little bit about what are the caution areas, what are the traps that you need to know about as a business owner when you're considering the structure of a series limited liability company. The first thing I would say is that although the statutory scheme promises that there will be a veil, some liability protection between each of the subunits. That liability protection is not going to be bulletproof. First of all, you have to do some things in order to get that liability protection. You have to keep separate and distinct records for each unit within the series, and you also have to have special language in the articles of organization and or the operating agreement that spell out that liability protection will be in place. Relatedly, the Internal Revenue Service has basically said that when there's a situation where a member of a subunit of a series limited liability company has tax liability or unpaid taxes, the IRS will reserve the right to look to other units to satisfy those obligations. And then also in connection with that, you have to remember that there are a lot of states that don't have series limited liability companies, for example, California. And so those states are not likely to recognize the partition of liability between the units. They're more likely to collapse all the units into one single company and make the whole enterprise pay liabilities. Now, another thing to consider and be cautious of when considering a Nevada limited liability, a series limited liability company, is that it's really best for use in Nevada, or at least another state that recognizes this type of entity. If you take a series limited liability company to a state like California or another state that doesn't recognize the entity, it will be difficult to qualify that company to do business in that state, and it will certainly be difficult to receive the same liability protections that you would otherwise expect. Or another thing to consider when that offsets against the advantages, the administrative advantages of a series limited liability company, is that each unit in the series has to have its own record keeping, and it has to have its own business licenses, and so you may find that the administrative hassle and cost of having 5 separate LLCs may be about the same as having one series limited liability company with 5 units. You may not get a huge savings in the administration, and depending on the level of sophistication, you may find that your tax, your accounting fees and maybe even your legal fees go up using the series limited liability structure. And then lastly, another point of caution is that there are a lot of banks that won't loan money to a series limited liability company or a unit within that series LLC. And so you'll need to make sure with your bank or other lender that's an option for you with this type of a structure. Another point of caution to consider with the series limited liability company is that if there is a problem with the overarching limited liability company, that problem could tumble down and bleed down to the subunits within the series limited liability company. So for example, if the voting members of the overarching company deadlock on a vote, then that could be a serious situation and could ultimately cause the overarching company to have to be dissolved. Well, that kind of a problem is going to put in question the existence or continued existence of the subunits within that LLC. And so it's especially in a situation where the ownership of the overarching LLC is different than the ownership and voting of the subunit, you've got to keep an eye on whether the overarching LLC problems could bleed down into your subunit. So that's a lot of information about series limited liability companies in Nevada. The next question, of course, is what do I do about all of this? Well, as you know, the choice of the appropriate entity structure for a company really requires careful consideration. You should consider that with your business attorney and with your accountant. Please give me a call if you have any questions about what type of structure is best for your business. You can call the Sierra Crest Business Law Group at 775-448-6070. We'll be happy to talk with you about that and help you make that decision. Thank you.